I feel like the role of an artist comes down to imagination, to remind ourselves of what we can imagine and what we can dream towards, to give ourselves like a scope outside of like what we are constantly being limited to. We are severely limited by how beautiful we can see this world right now. Artists can help people keep dreaming. I have to believe like, we can think beyond any of the current systems that we have. We can dream of something more than this.
Welcome, welcome. It is so wonderful to be back on air. How did you enjoy last week's episode with our new team and learning about our new name? How is the name landing for you? Do write in. We always love to hear from you. It's been such a dream of mine to grow the team and have more of us collaborating and co-creating together. And we have so many wonderful experiences coming up, both online and in person. I really can't wait to share them with you. Starting the week of 11th of April, we have my beautiful leadership mentoring, which is a 13-week one-to-one journey supported by the immersion, which is a very in-depth leadership experience. If you're in a moment of transition and would like some support with creating the inner shifts that you need for this next phase of your life and want to learn a whole different approach to leadership, then get in touch. It's always such a joy to work together in this way and uncover so much of your essence, as well as clear blocks and open up new pathways. We can get into strategy and timelines around launching something too. For example, I've worked with people creating podcasts or starting new businesses where we address the inner work such as confidence, worth, and intuition, as well as strategy. The whole program is assisted by the online immersion where we delve into different themes from edge walking to collaboration to understanding energy. And we have 13 guest sessions as well from incredible people that have all been on this podcast sharing their leadership tips and stories. To find out more and to book a call to have a conversation to feel into if it's right for us, go to www.amisha.co.uk/leadership and make sure you book in a call before April the 11th. I went to an incredible event a couple of weeks ago, which had been put on by some dear friends, Farah and Rory, and their team at the Centre of Memory Foundation. The fundraiser was to bring together community in celebration with so much live music, healing, and art. A real joy to raise money for the Amazon and an incredible tribe there. They say, we all share a deep love of the Amazon, its people, and its unique natural diversity. The threats of this irreplaceable natural environment and habitat continue to gain momentum, despite the worldwide awareness over recent decades of its precarious situation. This is also the case of the indigenous people in the region that are the guardians and protectors of these lands. They need our support to enable them to survive, and we all need their support to help preserve the forest. The Honey Queen are one of the indigenous groups who have been under threat and have managed to survive often against great adversity, upholding their ancient traditions and deep connection to nature. I have a personal relationship with the Honey Queen and the medicine that they bring, having met many of their pages and community members. Their work really, really is beautiful, and we really need to support them. In recent years, to continue to raise awareness of the urgency of this situation and to share their innate wisdom and knowledge of the forest, a number of Honey Queen spiritual leaders have begun to travel around the world. One of these is Tadu Sia Hubai, a Honey Queen page from the village called Centro de Memoria, Century of Memory Village, situated in the state of Acre, Brazil. He is the spiritual leader of 36 Honey Queen villages, a man of great depth, gentle yet strong, a healer, an educator, a filmmaker, a writer, and a chief who has enormous respect from his people. The money they are raising go towards an incredible building project, which includes an artisan well to bring clean water source, a healing center, and protection of the library of healing plants that they have there. Some of you will know the unique, joyful flavor of the Honey Queen people and the phrase Ishkawata Kaiwe, Kaiwe Ki Ki, which speaks to transformation and the greeting that is used, hausch, hausch, we are together in this eternal life. If you can contribute anything to this campaign, it is so welcomed and needed. You can find the link in our show notes for this episode or in our most recent newsletter. We hope to feature friends and spiritual leaders from the Amazon in future episodes, as the Amazon is such a vital part of our global habitat. And now to this episode. My guest is Jason Bayani, who I met at an event last year for the wonderful Bioneers community. Jason Bayani is the author of Locus and Amulet. He's an MFA graduate from St. Mary's College, a Kundiman Fellow, and is the co-director of Kearny Street Workshop, the oldest multi-disciplinary Asian Pacific American arts organization in the country. His publishing credits include World Literature Day and Lantern Review. Jason is the recipient of the 2021 California Arts Council Established Artist Fellowship and is a featured artist for the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists Festival in 2022. He performs regularly around the country and debuted his solo theatre show, Locus of Control, in 2016 with theatrical runs in San Francisco, New York, and Austin. In this conversation, entitled An Artist's Way During Wild Times, we explore the themes of uninterrupted imagination, silence, and trust, where we speak to the question, how do we imagine and flourish a future in times of wild interruptions? I hope that you enjoy this conversation and it opens up your artistry and voice. Welcome to All That We Are, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing and envisioning, we create the futures of our wildest dreams. And we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible. Jason, I am so delighted to welcome you to All That We Are. This is one of the first podcasts that we're recording with our new name. I want to share that we met through a beautiful Bioneers event, and it was one of the Bioneers community conversations. Nina Simons was there, who's been on lots of these podcasts, and Amy Lenzo and David Shaw were hosting it. The theme of that evening was embracing intuition, embodiment, and grief for navigating through tween times. And I shared some reflections on what that meant to me during this time, and this was back in the autumn. And you had this amazing task of writing something from all of the words that were shared from everybody that was part of that conversation. Would you share what you wrote with us? It was so beautiful.
Yeah, it was really kind of like strange but fun and enjoyable task. And I guess I can, just to be able to take from, what everyone's discussing and try to create this new thing out of it that could reflect back to the people participating, what they were talking about. And yeah, it's kind of like a pastiche or one of those type of things. So this is the community conversation poem. From embracing intuition, embodiment, and grief for navigating through tween times. Let the old self die to be present for what's in front of you. What is it like to live in a system that is dying? How do we live beautifully in that death? I am finding a new future. This is an invitation to the ways that are sitting in front of you from a more embodied place. The process is ongoing. What is it to sing into our intuition within this dying system when so much doesn't make sense? What does your intuition say about how to navigate life in these times? What does your body hold? Our intuition is different than our desire. What called you today? I'm here to listen deeply. Living an embodied, intuitive life is living in these times. I'm feeling quiet, living with heavy grief, while watching what is in front of me. All this potential, and this is how we treat people. This is how we live on this land. I'm in a transitional phase. There's a vastness of grief and loss that is true to being present with our times. All that is depreciating and broken. The scenery always comes around, trying to live a life of values in the crises of this time. How do we create beauty and meaning, make the front door more open? Our politicians are not showing up. We banned plastic bags, but now our oceans are full of masks. The world changes, but yet it feels as if nothing changes. How do we live in a system that we know is dying, that continues to be upheld by those in power? Surely there will be a moment where we all wake up. But what will we wake to? So many people believe themselves to be in a place of knowing, to believe they know is to hold a certain power. What's true anymore in polarity, but a triumph of love overpowers a love of power. Jerry Tello said, so many people want to be a teacher rather than receive the lessons. Take the limitation off my imagination. The systems we have now aren't working. Capitalism has created a structure where the majority of us suffer. We're instructed to carry on as normal as more people suffer. There are turbulent times on our doorstep. We are isolated in our striving, in our production, in our consuming. I'm not searching for what is nice, which is not possible in this system. Being okay and being lost opens up a lot. How do I participate in culture and society while trying to create something else? So I don't drown, so I don't get overwhelmed by the news, the barrage of information when the leaves are changing. My feet touch the ground surrounded by the trees I so love. I saw the cat unmute for a second. How do we listen to our intuition? I want to lean into what is lost. That's what my intuition tells me. Intuition isn't spiritual. It's just part of human intelligence. For the turbulent times on our doorstep, I'm not pretending everything is fine. I'm supposed to pretend that everything is fine. I'm being told to pretend that everything is fine. My intuition has been violently severed from my body. White supremacy fears my intuition. Patriarchy fears my intuition. Capitalism fears my intuition. Our clutching to what we thought was normal, it's not okay. I'm finding a new name for the future. We can be visionary. What I want to offer into this space, how confusing it is, how painful it can be. I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. Accepting we're lost and connect with others who feel lost. That's what my intuition is telling me. Feed the sacred every day. Complexity that invites a deep listening. Be guided by what we can't yet explain. How do we live in beauty? Connect to the deeper intelligence within our bodies. Our intuition is saying, accept uncertainty. Take 30 seconds of silence to offer my best. How painful it is to see more and more of the same, the mocking of our innate ways to listen. I grieve this loss. We each have a piece of the whole. We all have a body and we all have to take care of it. It's no secret. You are coming at a good time. I'm trying to find something different. It's going to take me a while, I think. This change is happening. There's no way around it. Slow down. Stand in your power. We need it all. That's where the intuition comes in. Slow down and listen carefully. We have to feel what is happening. I'm trying to find something different. It's going to take me a while, I think. Let my old self die. There's a place for quiet. Small is beautiful, and the future is.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Wow, those words, like, that was 5 months ago. And I feel like in that 5 months, I just sped right up. And now I'm remembering how my intention was to slow down.
Yeah, I think one of the things I started like realizing, started feeling is that like how much we are interrupted from being still, from finding places of quiet. I was thinking a lot when it happened after when people on social media after the writer from I May Destroy You. It was Michaela Cole. Yeah. So in the speech, there was this idea of like, don't be afraid to disappear, find your places of silence. The one thing I was thinking about when people were really reacting strongly to that, because it's such a thing that we don't think about. Because the thing is that we're so guided to have to speak and to produce and to any desire that we may have to find places of quiet is constantly being interrupted, and it's constantly like, you're being prompted to have to respond, to have to make something, to have to say something. And I think, a lot of people realize like, I need to like find a place where I don't have to do, all of that. But it's kind of hard because it's like things move so fast, like you're saying, and just like, and you're always feeling like you have to catch up. You bringing up that like things are sped up because things are just constantly happening and thrown at you.
Yeah, and I feel like there was a big like, okay, everything's opening again. Like, quick, we need to do everything we didn't do, and I feel that sometimes the more space I create, the more things come towards me that want to fill it, and it's something that I'm really learning of, like how to actually really protect that space and know that somehow like you create like a bit of a void, it somehow like attracts more things towards it. So there's like an art in saying, no, I'm going to keep my void.
Yeah. And that's a strange thing, is like, how do we create voids for each other? Because the thing is like, when we're thinking about the ways that we create space, it's always like towards something, or it's always like you're building a space where something has to happen, or something has to be done, or, or something has to be made, and it's just kind of like, what if there's just a space where nothing happens? Like,
yeah. And the power of like not saying anything until you have something to really say, and where we've got to with this kind of constantly like making ourselves present in this kind of online space. I love that notion of disappearing, and that disappearing being like a reclamation of something else.
Yeah. Because it is. I mean, like, I felt that pressure for a long time too. It took me a long time to get to the point where it's like, I don't have to respond to things on the internet, and I don't have to put my labor towards, having to, I don't know, create content, like, just to keep myself quote unquote relevant. Like, it takes me a long time to think through things, and I'm a slow writer. Like, and like some people are just good, some people are better at social media, and just can do it and be effective. I'm not.
Well, also this word content, when people say to me about like my content, and I'm like, I'm not like a jug that's full of something, like, or a box that contains things. Like, I'm a soul, and this is creativity. It's not content. It's poems, it's words, it's soulfulness, it's art, it's expression. Yeah, I feel like this whole idea that we have to sell ourselves in this way, like, I'm really hoping that goes out somehow as something else bubbles from this time that we're in, and just that recognition of what's really important.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that I think I've come to reconcile. Like, I want to be like a poet and an artist in the way that I want to do it. And I still read a lot of social media. I still read like a lot of tweets because I'm very interested in what people are talking about, and also like the different subcultures and kind of like, what they're experiencing. But one of the things like with a lot of like poets and writers too, is like if you go the academic route, I saw someone talking about this the other day. If you go the academic route and you teach at school, it's like if you're not producing, if you're not being published or getting into like magazines or things like that, it's being assumed by your program that you're not doing what you need to do. I had my first book in 2013, my second book in 2019, and I haven't really written since then. And so it's kind of like, I mean, I've written a little bit of things here and there, but it's kind of like I can't be on this production schedule that is necessary to maintain like, I don't know, an academic career or like something like that. I've been okay with not writing like the last couple of years to the extent that I was before. Like, I just know it's going to come again. And when it does, I'll be ready for it. But like, it's this constant, like, you're in this thing. It's like, if you don't keep producing, you'll become irrelevant. I don't know. I can't.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me.
And something about being worthy as we are and allowing like the real depths of our creativity to stir us and to move us, and not feeling like, okay, we have to, and it has to fit this format and be this many words, and it has to be something that people's brains can take in when they're just kind of flicking through something. I feel like there's place for everything, and that there's place for really honoring that space of the artist and honoring like your own journey and expression and way of being with who you are as an artist. What does a beautiful future mean to you? So we've just changed our name and now we are all that we are, but I'm still interested in visions of the future and how we can make sense of where we are and all that we are, with a lens to what's possible, what we're becoming.
I mean, for me, I think it could be pretty simple, that people's needs are met, that people are able to have housing, they're able to have food, they're able to live in conditions that aren't like horrifying. It doesn't have to be like everyone's living the same across the board, but like, as long as like people can not go to bed hungry, and so much of what, kind of like the systems that are in place are dependent on are like, there has to be an exploited class. And it's just like, why does it have to, I mean, I don't know, I feel like I sound naive saying it, but why does it have to be that way? Like, you're not asking for every single person to have expensive things. You're asking for people just to be able to like have enough food and to be able to live in a place that's comfortable enough to meet their needs. And it's almost like this ability for some to have more, has to come at the expense of a significant amount of people. And we're so unwilling to give up that notion because there's enough people who are comfortable with the way things are. I think giving enough people comfort allows for things that are good in us to be able to flourish. It allows for our ability to take care of each other to be able to flourish, because we're not so consumed with having to survive or having to do the things that are needed to take care of ourselves. I don't understand why this is such a wild notion,
Yeah, I hear you. I was in the post office like just before Christmas, And the post office just before Christmas is this very stressful place. There were so many people in there, and everyone was like trying to like pay something or like post something or all these issues. And a lot of people were like talking about like, oh, this company like took more money for my bill than they were supposed to, but like now I'm having to like stand here again for like an hour to try and fix it. And I just was feeling like, wow, we're just all in this like, we're all in a battle with all these corporate machines every day just to kind of do our like basic things. And everything's just hard because you're having to like reason with like these sort of systems that say no most of the time, and wait on these long like hold lines, and so many things that could be simple are not, and they take up so much of our time. And that's people that are privileged enough to, you know, to have like a good roof over their head and all of that. You know, what you share, I get that it does sound naive, and it's so weird, really, that it does, because all that we want for ourselves and the people in our lives that we love is that they have what they need to thrive, hopefully, but at least to survive. And then when we extend that lens to like all human beings, it's strange how that becomes naive all of a sudden. And it's like, well, why would we not want everybody in this whole world to have enough food, especially when we do have enough food in this whole world? And when we live in this kind of way that can be so wasteful, I mean, I fall into that waste too. I see vegetables going bad in my house, and I order things that come in all of these boxes, and I'm just like, wow, like so much went into me being able to just have this thing, and it's just really ridiculous. I would love for this kind of take on the world that we're actually living in, for that to be the thing that seems strange and naive, that as humans we couldn't do something better with all of this intelligence.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, all this intelligence is put towards like creating more systems that create more money. I don't know. I know I'm not saying anything particularly groundbreaking in all this, but it's like everything's plugged into something else that we can't unplug because it means there's less profit margin in another place. And what, you know, it's not that like people are not wanting to let go of it. It's that the people may want to let go of it, but there's enough people like who make money off of that are going to want to keep that in place. You know, I mean, like oil, you know, like so much of the world's problems could be solved, particularly through coming off of oil. Yeah. And we don't live efficiently, and we don't live, I mean, there's so many ways that we could live better, but I mean, it's not worth it for good enough amount of people who make money off of like it not being that way. It puts us all in this situation where it's just like, well, we just have to get what we can get out of it. That's like, things just confound me all the time. And I think that's why I get stuck a lot, and why I just like, I try to look at things so many different ways, and it just keeps coming to, I just end up back to being confounded. You know, and I don't want to remain hopeless. I want to believe like we can, you know, build a better future, you know, a more beautiful one. I'm kind of also naturally very cynical. It's so much effort just to be able to try to believe that we can work towards.
What have you seen in the Bay Area over this past couple of years?
In regards to like what any changes over the last couple of years?
Yeah.
There's been like a lot of change for a long time, especially with like the rapid development that has occurred around here, especially like pre-pandemic. I moved, I think around 2010, I moved away from here and moved to Austin for about like almost 2 years. even when I was over there, things just completely, like, rapidly changed over that short period of time I was there. And then when I came back from Austin, I came back here and, like, it almost felt like I didn't recognize these places because things had changed so much. New things were being built. Old places that I like going to were gone. I work for an Asian American arts organization in San Francisco called Kearny Street Workshop, and where our office is. I've been working there since 2014, and just the changes that were occurring in that place, that district, the South of Market, where I'm located for work, was heavily populated with Filipino families. And over that course of time, there was a sharp decline in the number of residents as they were fighting to make this place a cultural district, a Filipino cultural district, just because the development that was happening over there, was pushing a lot of families out. Some of those families became homeless in, the places that they grew up. And, these past 2 years of the pandemic and just kind of like, I don't know, it's halted that development in a different way. Things are still being built, even with like kind of a slowing down of development that, we could kind of bring back a bit more of like the San Francisco that was there before. But I think it just kind of sped up that change. Venues that were like, holdouts from kind of like the San Francisco I remember when I was a college student there, and a lot more places ended up having to shut down. The changes that are happening here, I don't think we've really seen, like, especially over the last 2 years, how much of an effect it's really had. One of the things people are hand-wringing a lot about is like the uptick in crime, which is like, that's what happens when there's an economic downturn. This isn't like the first time. We saw this in 2010 or 2009 after the real estate collapse. There were a lot of attacks on Asian people as well during that time. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that like the economy during the pandemic, like some people made out well. There's a certain group of people made out well because they were staying at home, were able to save money. But then there is another like large group of people that, this economic downturn definitely hit them hard. And so, when people are experiencing, economic hardships, that of course crime is going to go up. And so because, crime has went up, all that movement that was made to try to, make reforms in police departments are getting stifled because people are afraid that crime is run rampant in the city, and now we need more police, and now we need more funding, for police. That becomes worrisome, and it feels like that's the cycles of an economic downturn strengthens people's resolve towards wanting more like police presence and more police funding. We're going to go through this whole thing again, with having to ask for reforms and having to ask for changes. You just kind of see these things happening, and it makes you feel kind of like helpless. And I think like, being like I'm like mid-40s now, and it is different, but then it's like you kind of seen these cycles. And if you like, you look at kind of history, and especially recent history, like those cycles played out in some way or another. And it's just like, yeah, it is. And these are things that like stress me out and cause me to shut down. I'm like, what can be done?
Do you feel like, you said that you haven't been writing the last couple of years. Do you feel like that's in relationship to the pandemic and the things that have been happening? And
yeah, I think so, because it's kind of like, a lot of what I was writing towards, I think, before the pandemic hit, had to do with exploring my family story, the history of migration, Filipino migration to the United States. That this idea that a lot of my work was being guided by this need to be able to tell the story of my family because this was a way of being able to ensure that the Filipino story was being told by us. Because I felt that what I was doing was speaking in conversation to what other Filipino artists were doing, and that like us together is this movement towards being able to take our agency towards being able to tell what the story is, and in that way being able to say that like through this we're able to tell and we're able to contribute to what the story of this country is, for good or for bad. And I felt that was something that for a lot of like, Black, Indigenous and POC creatives, that the story of this country being told by us, that's important. And that's what's needed. And I still believe this way, that, I still believe in that. But it's also like with everything that's happening, it just kind of flipped everything around, because it's kind of like I have to look at it in a different way too. And I've had to question like, is my voice necessary right now? And what is it that I can contribute to what is happening? And also that feeling too, it's like we're in such a like hot take culture, and I have no hot takes to give. I sit in something and I try to create that experience for people who engage with the work I do. Yeah, I question, does that make what I'm doing like, is that just some kind of self-serving, like solipsistic exercise? For me, am I contributing anything of worth to the conversations that are needed right now? Am I being apolitical because I'm afraid to engage? I mean, it's not to say like I believe my work is very political, but like I also sometimes, I'm afraid that like maybe I am too careful at times. But it's also like that's also the way I go about things. I don't land hard on anything because I don't know. And I sit in that unknowing, and the work I do is to be able to work through it and to kind of like see, because it's in my writing, like I don't have a lesson. I'm not here to be a teacher. I'm here to be like a person that's inside of the world, which I don't feel a lot of the time. I feel out of sync most everything. These are one of the few times this is where I can feel like I'm engaged in a meaningful way. I don't know, is that if I don't know if that makes my art completely self-serving, but I mean, I am trying to speak towards these things. I just like, I can't be the person that knows everything, or that I'm not trying to preach. I'm just trying to speak to somebody and hoping that that person's out there willing to receive it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, Jason. There's such a focus on like this kind of expert culture and cancel culture and needing to know the answers. And I feel like that's why there's this insane polarity at this time. And I feel like it's really courageous to sit in the not knowing and in the messiness of this experience, to really like have an authentic relationship with this being a new time, and a time that we are all learning together. And so we don't have the answers right now. Like we have questions. And that line that you said, in the words that you shared about how we're not here to be teachers, like we are here to experience life and to be allies and friends and community and experience this together.
Yeah. Like I said, I read a lot of social media, and it's just like, it's just kind of wild to me, like how often I'm just kind of being told what to do, or, how to kind of live, that there is so often like the voice I'm hearing is one placing itself as being an authority. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make any type of sense, because it's like, yes, I've experienced things and I'm willing to share that with you as well. And I'm willing to share with you what I've learned, but it's only what works for me. If it might work for you, who knows? But it's kind of like, that's the way I always have to frame it. Like, hey, this is what I experienced and this is what I did. And it's never like, don't do this, or like, or
this is what you
like,
have to do.
Yeah. Or like, fear is conquerable by this method. And it's just like, I'm in a constant state of befuddlement by everything. I just sit there, I'm like, what the hell is going on? It's a constant thing. And it's because like I'm very into sports. And so like it's something I saw in like sports culture for a very long time, where it's just kind of like people who talk about sports, they are the absolute authority on everything that is happening in a game. They know better than any of the coaches what moves need to be made. I don't know, maybe it's just all part of the same thing, but it looks a lot of the same, to me. I listen to that just to be entertained by something that's like low stakes. But, to apply that to things that are as high stakes as things like our economy, or things like government and international relations, it doesn't make sense.
We are taking just a short pause here. If you are enjoying this episode, please consider joining our community. For a small contribution, you can be part of our beautiful online world, where we deepen the conversation and offer spaces of learning and practice. As a member, you are a patron supporting the making of this show, and you receive a number of benefits, such as special member-only events and discounts on all our courses, retreats, and in-person experiences. You will have membership to our app and connect with inspiring humans around the world through a social network to discuss the themes of the show away from the eyes of advertisers and the manipulation of big tech. Our membership is what makes us able to stay advertising free in a world that is always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. And it is the very heart of all that we are. Head to www.allthatweare.org/support to find out more. What do you feel is the role of the artist or the creative in a time like this?
For me, I feel like the role of an artist, I think, comes down to imagination, like to remind ourselves of what we can imagine and what we can dream towards, to give ourselves like a scope outside of like what we are constantly being limited to. I understand like why you moved off of like, the future is beautiful. To me, I liked it because it provides space towards dreaming, because we are severely limited by how beautiful we can see this world right now. Like I grew up in the 80s, and so I constantly felt like I was either going to be murdered by a serial killer or die in a nuclear war or be kidnapped. And it's just kind of like
in a white van.
In a white van.
In England in the 80s, it was a white van that I was scared of.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, or quicksand. It's you had all these things, and like I feel like that's and I can't imagine what it's like for young people today. And I always felt like those fears have limited my scope, because those fears continue today in a lot of different ways. It disallows me from being able to believe there's any worth left or anything worth like fighting for. It makes me believe that, a more beautiful future or more just future is something that's naive to believe in, because it just seems like there's nothing else that can be done other than that. People are always going to be inherently like terrible to still have an imagination. There's a line by Diane DePrima when I was younger, coming up as a writer. It just always stuck with me. And she has this line that says, the only war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed by it. Like initially when you hear the line, you get stuck on like, is it the only war that matters? Like, but you think about it, like it sits with me because it's kind of like I've always felt that my capacity to dream, to imagine, was being stifled, was being attacked. What is it to be a person who doesn't dream, who doesn't imagine, who's only consumed by what they want to have and can't have? And to believe is that I can't have something unless someone else doesn't have something, and that's kind of like, rather than believing like there's enough, that there is abundance to be shared, to be given. And that takes imagination to be able to believe that. Artists can help people keep dreaming. I'm not going to sit here and say like, it is the only thing that can help us do that. Throughout time, we're something that has always been able to do that. I have to believe like, we can think beyond any of the current systems that we have. We can dream of something more than this. I think to hold on to that that's a struggle too.
I'm really struck by those words. And, as we're sat here, I mean, there are many wars happening in the world at this moment, as there is a war in white Europe happening, and that's made war feel closer, especially say here in the UK, because it's just all over our news in a way that the other wars are not. And so that sense of something being closer is definitely here, and something being more unstable. And, when the wars are shown that are happening, say in the Yemen or in Myanmar, Afghanistan, or in Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, like they're not shown in the same way. And what's being shown definitely here is like, this war could be happening in your town soon. It's here. This notion that like all war and kind of comes from like a crisis of imagination, and those wars, like these violent, like bloody wars that happen because people decide that they don't have enough, that they want something more at any cost. But also the wars that happen inside our own being, the wars that we have with ourself and our shadow. I love that the more that we're able to connect to our imagination, and then we really do connect to all that we are, we connect to all that's possible, and it opens up like a whole other field of potentiality. There seems to be something in here about how imagination and worth are somehow connected, and that kind of innate sense of worth, that you are here, therefore you are worthy, therefore you have something to say, you have something to offer, your presence means something. Whatever is coming through you is something that can create here beauty. When we're in crises, like whether it's internal or collective, that somewhere along the line that sense of worth has been damaged, and it's connected to needing something else. And it's the same as what we were talking about earlier with the posts teachers. This is how you have to be, that there isn't this kind of, that actually it stifles our imagination of like how we may actually be, and how we can be in our diversity as well. And that there's not just one way to approach it, but whatever way it is that means something to you, where you can tap into your imagination, that is the way, that is your way.
I was kind of thinking like now, I was talking about this. It's something like I kind of wanted to ask you about, because I know we talked a lot about like intuition and, trying to find our intuition, be connected to it. I've watched a lot of people react to what's been happening over the last couple of years. I've seen like a split, not too big of a split, but like certain close friends of mine who politically have ended up on, well, not, I mean, they're not like, not all of them are close friends, but like just people like I have on social media see like certain splits during ideological lines. Yeah, I mean, the intuition to not trust the government is something that is like, of course, like that's, you have reason not to, and there's something that led you to this place, not trust putting things in your body that you don't want to. But at the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's something I've been trying to like really, I guess, maybe work through, and something I've been struggling with. I try to trust my intuition, and I believe strongly in certain things. But when I see something on somebody on the opposite ideological side of things, like it feels like they are trusting what they think is their intuition as well. Because how do we reconcile that? How do we make sense of it? Like there, even though I'm completely opposed, it's something that, like I said, if it comes down to something of not trusting the government, that's, of course, like a thing. But if you're being guided by other forces or other ideologies, that almost guides or takes over, this very valid intuitive thought towards a place that maybe is not that is harmful or destructive.
Well, Jason, this is an excellent question. And it is a question that I have been contemplating a lot. And I don't have a great answer for it, because we are in this really interesting time. And it's like a time of post-truth, it's sometimes called. There are so many strong competing narratives. And also, I say this often to the generation older than me that grew up really trusting the news, and like my generation's like, oh, but this is clearly propaganda. And you can't trust this anymore. And you can see the difference between the channels and like the different and kind of like the story that they're sharing. And there's that questioning of like, why are we being shown this today out of all the things that are happening in the world today? And why this? And how does this make me feel? And what does this do to my nervous system? And why are we not being told this other thing that you find out somehow? And I feel like it's a really wild time. It's really hard to know what to trust. We know that we're in this time that's very much about the corporations and the money, and, that thing of like, follow the money if you want to kind of like understand like why. I'm really amazed by the people that have a really clear, strong narrative that are saying, this is what's happening. This is the answer. Yeah, it kind of fascinates me on like all sides when I come across people like that, because I don't know. My intuition tells me different things. I think our intuition can get very influenced by whatever else is around in our field, because we haven't been taught the skill of understanding our intuitive intelligence and living with our intuitive intelligence like throughout our lives in this dominant culture. It's not part of the way that schooling and education systems work. Like that's all about rational intelligence and recall intelligence. It's not about like being able to tap into the deepest essence of your intuition. And I don't feel that this culture that we're in and where the money is in this culture, that it doesn't want an intuitive, empowered, imaginative population. And so there is this kind of war that's happening towards that within us. We are tasked with trying to create a deeper relationship with these parts of ourselves, with our intuition, with our imagination, with our creativity. And there is so much like that makes that really, really hard. And so I say all that to say, I don't feel like we are yet in the realms of collective intuitive experience in this dominant culture, at least not in a way where it could be socially accepted and recognized. I'm always so curious about our dreams, and maybe our dreams are like telling a very similar story, but we're not even practiced in really like learning to analyze and listen to our dreams and see what they're showing us. So yeah, I feel like it's not an easy time, but all we can do is keep rooting into our intuitive experience and to keep good questions open. And, you know, the vaccine, for example, I feel that a lot of people have had to go on a real journey with that, of whether that feels right, and how strong it has been administered, and where some of the statistics don't make sense for how strong it's been administered, and what the right thing is for one's body and for one's community, and all of that. And I feel like all we can keep doing is like kind of checking in with ourselves and staying really open to discovering new information in whatever way that information is coming to us. So yeah, I don't have the answer to that question, because I am so baffled by the certainty that people have.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
I don't. And I'm like, no, how do they know?
Yeah. The amount of certainty that is being put out there. Another thing that always like baffles and befuddles me as well, like just the utter confidence like that what I am saying right now is the most true and absolute, like true thing. And I'm going to put all my weight behind it. And it's almost like that's being done because they feel like it has to be done, rather than it being really guided by belief. Like I have to be right. So whenever it's like they tie worth and a sense of self to these things. And so like, that's what happens. Like whenever you try to challenge, or if they get pushback, you know, that's why there's so much doubling down.
Yeah, it's canceling, this polarity, this like, you're right. Sorry, not you're right. You're wrong. I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just throwing away my rightness then. That's not what people are doing in these times. But yeah, it's really insane, all of that. And I was really grateful actually that we were on our break. We've been on a break since the summer, and I was really grateful for that. I was grateful to have that space to disappear and to not pretend to like know. And the one thing my intuition is telling me is to question when people tell me that they know. Because how? And I feel like this is part of what we're being asked as humans at this moment, like to kind of reconfigure in ourselves. And that is part of what is dying, like this time of like strong narratives. And how can we find that a new story that this is a time of like great transition.
Yeah, and it's just like, I really like that, you know, how you like what I brought up about imagination and what you brought up about intuition. I think it all ties together, and how maybe a lot of that is what are the ways in which we can continue to divest these things from it being made to serve the institutions that are in place, for it being made to serve power and the maintenance of power. How do we make our imagination, our intuition ours, like in a true way? I think these are things that are worth like struggling for and, you know, fighting for.
Yes. Is there a poem or something that you'd like to share with us?
You know, I've been writing a little, so not a lot, but, you know, I kind of do some things here and there. So I'll read it. This is a shorter one. So, I'm waiting for the words to catch up to my heart, which is elliptical at the moment. There's an apology even I am expecting to bore out of my throat. But what for? What for? I am continuing to write in a font that displeasures me. Everything shifts so rapidly. My body, the environment. My body, the environment. Why not return to something as aggressively unspectacular as Arial, a font for all my first thoughts? Today, I typed the words "someday again" and deleted and retyped, deleted and retyped. Inside of the collapse, I'm still holding on to narrative. This is not sentiment. It is how I keep my family together. When I breathe in deep enough, I feel it. All the old anger waiting to become newer anger. Not having the words can feel like not having something to hit. I think I wrote that in another poem before. What is the equation that solves everything? Ideas are commodity, even the idea that ideas are commodity. I don't even know what I have to sell. I've spent my entire life living on a fault line. I know all that's been made is inherently broken. This is not me being dour. This is me writing a note that says, I miss you. I meant that the other way, though, like, I miss you. But the one you were thinking works too.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Do you have something that you would like to share as we close, of something that you would like our friends listening to support, something that you feel is doing good work in the world?
Yeah, I work for a small local, arts organization, nonprofit. Investing in your community, investing in the small orgs who are doing work for the community, I think it's important. I think there are a lot of big organizations that do well, but it's these smaller orgs that are reaching directly to people and doing direct services and providing opportunities that other bigger organizations, can't provide. I think one of our, my organization, Kearny Street Workshop, one of our things we were able to do is work with a lot of artists at the beginning, of their careers, to provide opportunities that maybe not be available to them at the time. It's just so important. And I feel like a lot of what we've been able to do was help to build a greater network of artists here in the Bay Area. There's a lot of Asian American artists out here. My organization has been doing it for 50 years. And, they've had some part in the growth and fostering of that. For organizations that are doing work in your cities, being able to support them. You can also support us, kearnystreet.org, if you feel so inclined. But yeah, really supporting your local organizations that are helping to build, the communities in your city, in your town.
Thank you, Jason. And how would you like our friends listening to connect with you deeper? What's your website? jasonbayani.com.
Yeah, jasonbayani.com, or you can hit me up on the social medias, which I don't like. I only do Instagram. I will tweet something very rarely when I have a stray thought. But I use Twitter mostly for reading. But you can catch me on Instagram at Jason Bayani. It's the same on both.
Amazing. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and spending your time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on allthatweare.org. We give space to our guests to share their perspective without debating it or fact-checking, as this approach allows for deep, unedited conversations from the heart. We trust your discernment and wisdom to take what is useful and challenge what isn't in your own understanding. We offer spaces for discussion and integration in our membership community. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible by you, our beautiful community. If you loved this and would like to connect more deeply with us, please join our membership. For less than a tea or coffee a day, you can access our community conversations and benefits such as our app and member gatherings, as well as being a patron whose support makes this podcast happen. Please also hit subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen so others find us. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. It invites the full power of the more than human world, nature, the unseen, our ancestors, and our future generations. It reminds us that we never exist in silo, through borders, timelines, or polarity, that in each and every moment, all that we are is here.